Well, hey everyone. So this is your special edition Mother's Day Bible study. We are doing a soap of Psalm 139. And if you've never heard the term soap, it is short for scripture, meaning we read a little portion of the Bible, and then observation. We just notice things. What do each of us notice based on our perspective and our lives? And then it's application, which is how do we apply this thing we are observing in the Bible to our actual practical lives? And then P, which stands for prayer. We pray to finish it out, to close it out, to invite God's help into the whole process of seeing what he has to say through his word and then actually living it out in our lives. But there is no need to just have me lead us through a soap of Psalm 139. In honor of Mother's Day, I wanted to invite some friends to come and do this with me. So I wanted to introduce you and have these wonderful people say hi to you. So first we have Michelle. Hi, Michelle. And Terrilee.
Hello.
And Melissa.
Hi.
And Rachel.
Hi.
And Britt.
Hi.
So each of these wonderful people I have asked because I respect and love their perspectives. And they are also all moms, but each of our mom stories are different. And we'll talk about those as we make observations and just talk about what we notice God saying to us through Psalm 139. But we'll get started by reading it. So what we are going to read today is Psalm 139, 1 through 18. And we're going to read it in the NIV version. And you can follow along with us. You can pull out a paper Bible. You can read it on your phone. There's a million ways. Or you can just listen. But our goal with this is to really actively listen and see what we can observe in it. And it doesn't need to be profound. Like even us here in this room, it doesn't need to be profound. You may just notice a word. It could be anything. But then there will be profound things that come out of it because there always is whenever we do this. So I'm going to read it. So you guys can read along and listen, and then we'll have a free-for-all, and we can start talking about what we notice and what stands out to us. And we'll do that for as long as is fun, and then we'll go on to the next step. All right, I'm going to read to us. Here we go. Psalm 139. For the director of music, of David, a psalm. You have searched me, Lord, and you know me. You know when I sit and when I rise. You perceive my thoughts from afar. You discern my going out and my lying down. You are familiar with all my ways. Before a word is on my tongue, you, Lord, know it completely. You hem me in behind and before. You lay your hand upon me. Such knowledge is too wonderful for me, too lofty for me to attain. Where can I go from your spirit? Where can I flee from your presence? If I go up to the heavens, you are there. If I make my bed in the depths, you are there. If I rise on the wings of the dawn, if I settle on the far side of the sea, even there your hand will guide me. Your right hand will hold me fast. If I say, surely the darkness will hide me, and the light become night around me, even the darkness will not be dark to you. The night will shine like the day, for darkness is as light to you. For you created my inmost being. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful. I know that full well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was made in the secret place, when I was woven together in the depths of the earth. Your eyes saw my unformed body. All the days ordained for me were written in your book before one of them came to be. How precious to me are your thoughts, God. How vast is the sum of them. Were I to count them, they would outnumber the grains of sand. When I awake, I am still with you. For me, Psalm 139 is one of those scriptures that I go back to over and over again, that fearfully and wonderfully made. And there's some themes in there that I don't know, I need in my entire life. I need this idea that God is with me and knows me, already knows me. And so I don't have to fake it. And that I'm fearfully and wonderfully made comes back to me a lot because I have and do still struggle with so we were talking earlier about getting sick of looking at my face. That just after a while you get tired of watching yourself on video. If any of you have been on lots of Zoom meetings, you just get tired of seeing your own face staring back at you. And there's something about that fearfully and wonderfully made that I find reassuring. It's like, I am well made. no matter how I feel today about my face, it's beautiful and well made, and God doesn't make mistakes. And so those are just a couple of mine to get us started, but I'm sure you guys have lots of them too. Let's do raise your hand to start with until we figure out a good rhythm. So if you have an observation, what is it?
I'll start off.
Cool.
As I read this through and as I hear you read it, just the theme of being known sticks out to me. And, I know that we've all heard like our core desire as human beings, whether you're a mom or a dad or a female or male or a child, like you just want to be known. And that's our core desire. But yet I think a lot of us have fears of being known completely. And I think a lot of us, we hide and we hold ourselves back. So this whole psalm talking about, okay, the Lord knows me. And then he goes on to talk about all the ways that he knows us. It's not just like, oh, I know that person, like I know their name or I've seen them around, but the Lord knows us in so many different ways. So he talks about like how we move, like just like the small movements. And like when we leave our home, and he talks about the thoughts. Okay, this is where he's starting to get a little dangerous here because he's talking about these thoughts that we often try to filter and we don't want people to know. And what we will say before it even gets on our lips. And I think knowing that the Lord knows that could either bring us to a place of fear or it could bring us to a place of comfort. And when I read this, it's kind of shocking at first to know all the details, to read all the details that the Lord knows. But at the same time, it's like, oh, you're safe. You're not going to gossip about me. You're not going to backstab. You're not going to judge me. Sometimes I'm not really familiar with that, but that's the type of knowing that David is talking about here.
Yeah, that got me. So the like, you know what I'm going to say before I say it. It's like, whew. Because I think so much of parenting is saying your second choice sentence. Like, so, and God knows my first choice sentence. Because you're just like, your first instinct is normally one of like impulse or selfishness or like, are you serious? But that's not who you want to be as a parent. And so much of your parenting is like your second impulse sentence. And so I don't know, just that got me too. The like, God, God knows all of it. He knows my first impulse, and He knows the thought process I had to go through to actually just say out loud the second impulse sentence. And He knows that. He knows me so well to know that process in me, and loves me and supports me and accepts me as I am. That's really amazing, that there really is no way to scare God off.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Terrilee.
One of the verses that I think is the one that gets me every time I read this psalm is verse 16 that talks about all the days were ordained for me before one of them was written in your book. And that has been something for me over the years, just in my own personal life, that has caused me to live without fear, because I know that even before I was born, that God knew every single day of my life what was going to happen, what was going to happen to me, what I was going to do, all the things that would influence me. It was done. I mean, it was known by Him before I even took a breath. And so that verse became very real to me when I was a teenager, and I almost died. And so when I came out of that and understood this and realized that day was not ordained for me when I was a teenager, it has caused me to live in this place of not fear, but just to take risks and step out. And as when I became a parent, and now I had 3 children that I was responsible for, I feel like it really did give me so much more freedom as I said yes to things for them, as I encouraged them to take risks and try things and go on adventures and let's do this and that. And I found that comfort that there is in knowing that God has ordained every single one of my days, every single one of my children's days. Therefore, we can just be whatever we feel like he's calling us to without that fear that hampers us so often. And so, yeah, that's always been one of my very favorite verses.
Yeah, I've been thinking about that a lot. Oh, sorry, Britt, one sec.
No, yeah, go ahead.
I've been thinking about that a lot with like with the weird days we live in. Um, and just this overwhelming sense from people of like, I don't know if I'm doing this right. Like, I don't know if I'm doing this whole quarantine pandemic thing right. Is this right? I don't know. And yeah, we're the ones meant to live these days. Like, there's no question when I start to get worried for like, oh my gosh, what are my kids' lives going to be like? Like, is this the start of a whole different way of life being? Not up to me to decide, but God knows, and he knew we would be the ones that would be alive right now, and that it's not a mistake. And so my kids can handle it. I can handle it. Like, we're fine. We're designed for this. It may not feel like it because it's so new and we don't understand it, but we're designed for it. And so we can trust that. And then you stop fighting and thinking you're not the right person for this. Because you're the right person for this. If it's happening in your life, then you're the right person for it. And you don't have to waste the energy thinking, oh no, like someone else should be the mom right now, or someone else should be in charge. Like, sorry, like it's you. Like, don't waste time questioning it. It's you. Yeah, Britt, what were you gonna say?
Oh, to be really honest, I've never really reflected on this verse. I've never read it, just honestly, but it's really nice. And I think what stood out to me was verses 8, 9, and 10. And I talked about if I go up to the heavens, you're there. If I make a bed in the depths, you're there. If I rise on the wings of the dawn, if I settle on the far side of the sea, that just kind of reminds me that because I feel like I've made a lot of mistakes in my life and having like a hard childhood. I feel like no matter what we do, to me, it's speaking to me in a way saying, you know, no matter what we do, he's going to be there. No matter how far you think you're gone, he's going to be there. And I feel like that totally relates to me. And then what I try to teach to my kids as far as just constantly telling them, you know, if you guys make mistakes, that's okay. That's part of growth and learning. And even, you know, God sees all that and he still loves us regardless. And just reaffirming that with them is so incredibly important because they're going to make mistakes. It's not maybe, it's a for sure thing. So we all do. And it is what it is. You know, we're all sinners and falling short. So just remembering though that no matter what we do, he loves us is big for me, I think.
Yeah, I love that. And how cool that you haven't read Psalm 139 before, because
just being honest.
For reals though, like, because it's one of my, like, could pick a Psalm that I may not have read. Like, I probably at some point have read through all of them in a row, but I like picking individual ones. And since this is one of my favorite ones, I go to this one a lot. And so like, how cool to read it for the first time and be like, wow. Amazing. Because there's lots of people who read Psalms for the first time. I think we all do at some point. It's like, whoa, that one is amazing. I think so. I don't know, you guys. I'm weird, but I've been studying the Psalm all week. That's what I was talking about. And okay. So side note, sometimes I ruin things for myself. So I was reading this Psalm, and you know that song by The Police, the like, every move you make, watching you, the stalker song. So then I was reading this thinking, this is like a stalker psalm. Like, they're like, you know, when I sit and when I rise, you perceive my thoughts you know my going out, my lying down. Like, this is creepy. And then like, how do I get away from you? I can't get away from you. If I go up high, you're there. If I go down low, you're there. Like, how do I get away from you, God? And so number one, that made me laugh. Right? You can't get away from God. So number one, that made me laugh, and I ruined it for myself for a day because I was like, but then I was thinking about, so you know how like when someone you like tells you like, hey, so like I was watching you across the room, and I just thought I'd come over and talk to you, and you're like, hey, awesome, let's do that. But if someone you don't like comes over and does that, now they're a stalker, right? So it's like, please don't talk to me. You were watching me across the room, like that's creepy, please don't watch me. And it made me think like my attitude towards God, like how I feel, like Britt, you saying like you're gonna mess up and that's okay, like that's part of life. But so many of us struggle with that idea, like it really is okay. And so when we start to think we're not like we're not deserving of that attention, or there's something wrong, or there's something wrong with our lives that's not our fault, then we blame God for it. So we're like, God, I don't want you in my life. Like, if you let that person die, if you let that person betray me, if you let that thing happen, like, I don't want anything to do with you. Please stop watching me across the room. But when we feel worthy and also accept our lives as ordained and for us, then God's attention becomes something that we want to get. And we're like, oh, good, yes, please, because I know that you love me and you're in this, and I'm okay, and things are okay. But I think it struck me as so funny as like, right, sometimes we really don't want God's attention. You said it at the beginning, Michelle, you're like, sometimes you don't want all that attention, and it's scary. Like, you're scaring me. You're being a stalker. So this is the stalker psalm for me for this week.
I'll go. So when I first became a mom, when I had Jude, I quit my full-time job and stayed home with him. And it was something that I always wanted to do. And I feel really grateful and blessed to have been able to do that now for the last 9 years, which is crazy that I have a 9-year-old. But in those beginning days, I can remember being home with a newborn and thinking, gosh, what did I do today that was really like worthy of anything? Or I kind of felt like I kind of lost who I was and some of my identity. And I didn't realize that so much of my identity maybe was kind of wrapped up in the job that I was doing and the job that I was really good at. And now here I am with this tiny human that I'm in charge of, and I literally have no idea what I'm doing. And so I think there, in those days, you really do. I was wondering, like, does anybody see me? Does God see me? Does what I do matter? And I think I've probably had those feelings throughout my journey of motherhood, because it can be kind of isolating when you're, day-to-day laundry, errands, picking up from soccer, back when we could do sports, those were good times, baseball, all the things. And so there were days where it was like, okay, Lord, what did I do today that was actually worth anything? And I don't struggle with it as much now, because I really feel like this is my calling and this is where God has me right now. But I feel like this psalm reminds me, especially in the beginning verses, of just, yes, I matter. Yes, he sees me. And that really is comforting to me. Again, especially when I was like a brand new mama with a newborn, and what am I doing? And even now with 3 kids and homeschooling them, if we're going to call it homeschooling, pandemic learning that's happening right now. Am I doing a good job? Does he see what I'm doing? I don't know. So I think that's comforting too. So.
Thanks for sharing that, Rachel, because I don't think it's only in the newborn stages, but with every stage we do so much for our kids, and then so much of it is unseen, and there's just so much pulling at us. And I feel like during this pandemic time, there's even more pulling at us. So even more goes unseen and unknown. And I was just chuckling in my head when I was reading the scripture, and it said something about if I make my bed in the depths. I'm like, oh, why did he mention a chore in there? Oh,
make my bed.
So, but thank you for mentioning that, because I totally resonate with just being unseen and feeling isolated as a mom already, and then I think during this pandemic season feeling even more isolated because you can't even see your mom anymore. My mom can't help me right now because I can't visit her. My friends aren't there for me. So this in your journey is I definitely resonate with that.
Melissa, how about you?
So when I read it, I think maybe because of just the things that are happening just like in our daily life right now, just made me, one of the verses just gave me this image in my mind, but the verse that really stuck out to me was verse 5 that says, you hem me in behind and before, and you lay your hand upon me. So we've been reading a book like almost every night about a bunny, and he has like a burrow. And so my 4-year-old, when we tuck him in at night, he's like, Mommy, make me a burrow, which is like essentially just like tucking him in with all of his blankets, and no matter how hot it is, like he just wants all of the blankets. But he's like, make me a burrow, you know? And so I don't know, just thinking of that image of like what I do as a mom, and this idea of like God hemming me in around like on all sides and like laying his hand upon me, and like how tender of an image that is. And it's like, that's what I do with my boys at night when I tuck them into sleep, and just like lay my hand on their chest and like tell them things that are true about them and things that I love about them. And so I knew that verse was in there, but I think just because of this new burrow thing, like it just kind of like brought it to light. And there's this pastor, he said this phrase, it was about another psalm, but I think it applies to this one too, and just this concept. But he said this phrase that God doesn't cushion us, but he keeps us. And I was just thinking about that, like no matter what we go through, or just like venturing out into life, like, and me tucking in my son at night, like it's not going to save him from any sort of like hardship or suffering, kind of like what you were talking about, Terrilee, with like that fear or like what we're going to face. Like nothing about that is a superpower, you know, but it's this idea of, you know, that we are kept, that we're held, that I'm surrounded. And no matter what I'm going into, no matter what I face, that I'm surrounded. And I think with my story, sometimes I have a tendency to feel like it all depends on me, because I was like a super, super responsible kid from like a divorced home. And I was like, it all depends on me. Like, I'm going to take care of everything. And just realizing that God is saying like, no, like I've got you, and you can like lean into me, and I'm surrounding you. And so, yeah, but even just like a simple thing, like that image just popped into my head, and thinking about like, what would it feel like? I know it's kind of maybe getting into the A a little bit, but like, what would it feel like to relate to God that way, and to allow him to just engage with me in that way, and to just be surrounded by his love and his presence, and to be aware of that. So yeah, that's what stuck out to me.
That's so good. Yeah, I think if I'm going to pick one thing that sticks out to me, it really is that I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful. I know that full well. I think a lot of times we make things and we're critical of the things that we make, but the things that God makes are right. They are good, and they are very good when it comes to women. And so there is just this fearfully and wonderfully made part of being human, this like miraculous thing. I was studying this week, and if you have kids, then the cells from your kids mix with yours and stay in your body. So you now, like, you have your kids' cells in your body the same way that, not the same, but in a way, and then your cells are also in theirs. And just what a miracle that is. And that kids get their mitochondria for the most part from their moms. So like the energy, the thing that keeps them healthy, like the thing that keeps them going, is from their mom. And I think that the way God works in how fearfully and wonderfully made we are is really, really miraculous, and something that I find so precious to me on a daily basis. Just like, we're amazing. And so on days even where I have trouble, like just with faith in general maybe, or even just like trusting that today is going to be okay, there's something about the like looking at your hands or taking a breath and just thinking about what a miracle our bodies are, what a miracle the relationship between those of us who do have biological kids and those kids, like how crazy it is that we share cells back and forth, and that their cells are adaptive in our bodies. And so their cells don't just become one particular thing. They like move around to figure out how they can help and what they should become, is amazing to me. And then I always think about this stuff, probably because I have 2 girls. And I do think that there is an especially hard beauty issue for women as compared to the way guys move through the world. And so the fact that God knows how we move through the world, and then knows what we're going to say, and knows every cell in our bodies, and did it on purpose, and that we are beautiful to him, that he's proud of what he made, and that we could stay feeling proud of who we are. My girls are now old enough that they've crossed that threshold from like looking in the mirror and being like, Mom, I am beautiful, and like dancing and like watching themselves spin. Right? They passed that. Now they're at the age where we all fully can relate, where they walk into a room and they get eyed up and down, for better and for worse, and that who they are based on other people's perceptions of their physical attributes is weighed and measured and decided, and that they now have to live with that, and how hard that is as a person. Like, you're not, yes, I'm not supposed to care what other people think, but you can feel it. You can feel what people think of you without them ever saying anything. And they now are at the age where they have to move around the world and feel that same weight. And so that verse of, I am fearfully and wonderfully made, and that every one of my cells is on purpose and God put it there, and that I am well designed, is one of those like handhold verses. Like, I'm never letting go of this one. This one is necessary, because the number of messages that I get that are different from that are in the thousands, and there's so few of the messages of you are beautiful and well made. And so that one's extra important to me as a mom of two girls who are 11 and 15 and in the thick of that attack.
Yeah, that fearfully and wonderfully made piece, I've also looked at that not just from the component of like my outward appearance, but also from the perspective of how God's wired me. And there's been so many times over the years where I have felt like I'm not enough, or mostly I'm not enough. It's rarely been I'm too much. It's more, and it's been in specifically things like, I don't feel like I'm a leader, or I don't feel like I'm this. And yet God's created me that way. And so I've negated his plan and purpose for me and what he wants to accomplish through me. And so that verse to me, that I'm fearfully and wonderfully made, has been super impactful, just from the accepting of how he's wired me. And it's different. Obviously it's different from everyone else, but he has given me, this makeup and this wiring, and put me in this location, in this community, in this church, in this body of people, because that's what he has fearfully and wonderfully created me to accomplish his purpose in. And so, yeah, it's funny because a lot of times I have seen this verse, we look at it from, our outward appearance, but I also think it's something we need to take to heart for, our inner self, and how we tend, as women, as humans, to not always think that, or we compare ourselves to others and what they have and what they do and how they come across and what they accomplish, and that isn't taking into account how God has fearfully and wonderfully made you to do his plan, to accomplish his plan and purpose. So yeah, that's been very impactful for me, and something that I have to keep in front of me, especially when, each step along the way, when I feel like God's asking me to take a risk, to step into something new and unknown, and I have to rely so purposefully on him. I can only do that because I'm slowly, I'm 50. How old did I just turn? 55.
Not supposed to couch.
But no, I feel like with age, like it is seriously, I'm the oldest one here. It is something I'm so grateful for, because truly with age does come wisdom. And I feel like, at this stage of life, I've seen God work in me in this specific purpose now, that I'm so much more readily step into things, and take those risks, because I've learned to trust in the fact that he has made me so specifically to accomplish his purposes. So yeah, it's a great thing to sit in, and you feel like you might be doing well for a while, and then he brings it back up again. Is like, nope, still got to keep thinking about that.
Yeah, for sure. For you guys, is there an area in your mothering, it could be present or past, where you felt like it was hard? And as we've been talking about this psalm, that it answers some of that. Like, that's what I was just thinking about, Terrilee, with, as you were saying that, like, and thinking about that I'm designed for this. Because I think there have definitely been times that I feel overwhelmed by what my kids need, and that I just don't know how to help. and that I wish I knew how. And it starts to creep in this like, I wish that their mom knew how, right? But I'm the mom, and so I have to figure it out. And there's something in the all my days were ordained that I find really reassuring. That I'm, we can all disagree on all kinds of details about how to mother, but each of us has only ever been us, and each of our kids is a unique, beautifully made person, and so there's only going to be one of that ever, that combo of us as the mom and them, and even each of our kids is going to need a different kind of mothering, and so I find that really, really reassuring that this was ordained, that I was meant to be the mom right now to each of these kids, and I can rest in that and then move forward from there. For you guys, is there anything that you feel like this part of mothering is hard, whatever that part is, and that the Psalm speaks to it in any way?
Well, I can just echo even just some of what you shared about, sometimes I do really have to remind myself that the boys that God entrusted me with to be their mama, I'm supposed to be their mom. No one else is supposed to be their mom. And so he's equipped me with his help how to be their mom. And there are days though where, specifically with my oldest, we're very, very, very different. And so he's wired a lot like his dad. I'm a lot of feelings all the time. And my oldest is very analytical. He has systems. I don't know who that sounds like, but it sounds like his dad, right? He's very much that way. And so there are days where literally when Justin would go to work, those were the good days, right? He'd go to work and then he'd come home from work and I'd say, how was your day? But now it's like he's here all day. But he would come home from a day of work and I would literally be like, I'm irritated with you because your son is driving me insane and he's a mini you. And I don't know what to do with this tiny human. I don't understand him. I don't know what to do. And Justin would kind of look at me like, well, I'm just coming in the door and she's mad at me because my kid was acting up. But there are days where I feel like I don't understand this child. I'm not it. I don't know what to do. And I think that this is in one of those, again, this verse just reminds me and reassures me that no, I'm supposed to be his mom. And yes, we are very different, but we're also alike. And with God's help, I'm going to figure it out. We're going to figure it out together. And I think I also have to remind myself that each one of my kids is unique and fearfully and wonderfully made, and they're very different. And so, yes, what worked with my oldest, not going to work with my middle or the baby necessarily. And even just celebrating the uniqueness of them and celebrating their individuality. I really want to champion that because I do think that comparison, well, I know that that's something that I've struggled with in my own life, and I don't want to project that. I don't want to do that in our home. And so that is something that I want to do also, is just be really in tune with how they're different and celebrate the differences. So I appreciated what you said, Nicole, about, just that I'm supposed to be their mom. And some days I feel like I'm nailing it and really, getting it right. And there are days where I'm like, well, tomorrow's a new day and we're going to try again tomorrow. And to be honest, since the pandemic situation, I feel like I've had a lot more of those days where I've had to say, Mommy's really sorry for her words. Mommy's sorry she wasn't patient today, but I love you and we're going to try harder tomorrow. So we're saying a lot of that in my house right now too. So.
Good.
This popped in my head. I don't know if it fully answers the question that you're asking about actually being a parent to my kids now, but as Terrilee was last talking, I was remembering actually how like a very specific time that I read this psalm, because I remember that it was around Christmas time, coming up around like the end of a year that Andrew and I had been trying to get pregnant and we were not. And I just remember that year, like still like so like super vividly, and even talking about being seen, it's just like I was wrestling so much with all of these thoughts of like, why did God like put this very specific desire in my heart to be a mom, and then it seems like he has like no plans of actually fulfilling that or making that happen. just like wrestling with that and just not knowing what to do, like with these feelings that I had, and not knowing when it was ever going to be over, not knowing if it would ever happen. And I remember reading this psalm because that verse about darkness is not dark to you, and like the darkness is as light to you. And I just remember feeling like this is like one of the darkest seasons I've ever been in my whole life. And I feel like there's nothing harder than wanting something like so deeply, and even believing like this makes so much sense as to like, this should be God's plan for my life. And it's like, it's not happening. And just realizing that God not only would walk into that with me, but as dark as I felt, that he could see everything. And yeah, so there's been tons of stuff since I've actually become a mom, but I think because of that, even in conversations like this, like I always think about the women that are like, there's going to be women listening to this that are like longing to be moms. And I know what that feels like. And just, it's so funny how I didn't even think about it as we read it today, but just as we've been talking about it, it's just like, man, I so remember the psalm really speaking to me in that time. And our story ended with, you know, 2 amazing boys, and it's a miracle. And I'm so grateful every day. But there were definitely some dark moments surrounding this just whole process of like becoming a mom at all, let alone the hard stuff I faced after. So.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. I do always think about that on Mother's Day. Like, it's such a complicated day, and just motherhood itself is so complicated because it looks so different for each person, if they even become a mom of like their own quote own kids. But like the situations for, I have so many people I know who wanted to have their own biological children, not just like be the aunt to wonderful nieces and nephews, but wanted to have kids who grew up in their house. And that never happened. And some of them adopted, some of them never did. Some of them still wish they had had kids. Some of them thought they'd have kids, but then that marriage ended and then never got back together with anyone else. And now they're 40 and thinking, I'm not so sure I want to try to have kids right now. So trying to figure out whether that dream should just pass by them, or what mothering looks like if it's not trying to get pregnant themselves. There's so much just complication and weight and heartache and longing and important, like you said, like why would God put this desire in my heart, and then look like there's no plan to actually fulfill it. And that's really real for so many people. And then yet on the side, when you do actually end up having babies who grow up in your house and become these people, and that is this miraculous thing you get to be a part of, and is also the hardest thing you ever do. And so you can't just ignore that. And so we have to hold all this space for all of these different like highs and lows that each of us have in this one area. It really does teach us, awkwardly, but teach us how to try to love our neighbor as ourselves and hold space for each other's experiences. And we all mess it up because we all only really know our perspective, and we do the best we can to see other people's, and to love each other, but it's hard. So I appreciate you saying that, because there are lots of people. There are people that we know who they were trying to get pregnant for a long time, and she's now pregnant by in vitro and hoping that this sticks this time and everything is okay. And friends who've adopted, and that the child they adopted is struggling, and how hard that is to just like, how do you keep wrestling with this was a good idea, this was a good idea, this was a good idea, even though your life is so much harder on this side of it. But harder is not worse. It can still be better. It can be harder and better at the same time. And so it's so complicated. And this psalm, this idea that each of your days is ordained and that God is in the highest highs, the like soar, when I rise on the wings or whatever it says, it's like could not be more lofty. I rise on the wings of the dawn, right? Like it can't be more lofty. But then, like you said, surely the darkness will hide me and the light will become night around me. Even the darkness will not be dark to you. The night will shine like the day. The darkness is as light to you. I think about how when we're sad, like really sad, how we want the darkness to hide us. And the other night I was just sad. Like this experience is sad. There are so many things that are so hard right now. And most of the time I'm fine, and then I get like knocked over with sadness, and I was knocked over with sadness, and I just was like, I would just like to curl up in a blanket of darkness now. Thank you. And then that verse popped into my head, and God was like, no darkness. I can't, there's no darkness here, hon. I can see you. Like, just made me think of like when kids play peekaboo, right? And they're like, you can't see me. I see you perfectly. I see everything about you, and I still love you. And I know you're hiding, but I still love you. And just God's love doesn't always look the way we want it to, but it doesn't mean it's less real. Anybody else before we move on to the next section have anything that you've noticed or observed that has like jumped out at you since our initial round?
Yeah, I think kind of what Terrilee was saying. I guess what's been kind of difficult for me is being a single mom. And then sometimes I think, especially in the church environment, you guys know me, I'm very honest, but there can tend to be judgment a lot of the times, or perception of that in a church environment. So I guess feeling like, you know, stepping into leadership, am I good enough? Like, I'm not married, you know, I don't have a partner. And then sometimes feeling like I'm not doing enough as a mom just because I'm, you know, the provider and the protector, and I'm trying to play all these different roles that typically two people would share. So that can be really challenging and overwhelming at times, and then just feeling like I don't measure up, and then having other things on top of that. So yeah, it can be really difficult, and then falling into the comparison trap where I'm looking at someone else's family and going, oh, well, you know, I wish I had that, or it would be easier, or, you know, I want my girls to have a great father figure to look up to, certain things like that. So but God just knocks me on the head every time, and is like, okay, you know, you're just who I made you to be, and you're right where I want you to be, and you're fearfully and wonderfully made. And trying to just, you know, keep putting that inside of me and remembering that. So, but yeah, that can be super challenging, I think.
Yeah. All right, so in application, so this one can be hard on the spot, so if you don't have an answer, you don't need to fake one. Is there an application step for you out of this psalm right now? Is there something that you think, oh, okay, I do want to work that into my life this week? That is something that I want to try to either be more aware of or to actually do. Is there anything that stands out to you?
To me or everyone?
You can go if you've got one, but everyone.
I don't know yet.
I think my application this week is I struggle with a lot of fear when it comes to, am I doing this right for my daughter? And I'm a fixer. Like, if something's not right, I could figure out how to fix it. And that was okay when my daughter was young, but as she's getting older now, I see all that is out there to harm her, my fear takes over. And so a lot of what Terrilee said resonated with me. And then as I was reading this scripture, I was thinking about this scripture for me. And then I just felt like God just saying, like, this is all true for your daughter too. Mm-hmm. And I was like, whoa, like it just hit me, like, she can't, like, God knows her, and God can find her, and God knows her movements, and God will take care of her. And that just brought me an overwhelming sense of comfort. Like, we were talking about, like, hey, God's got us. I'm like, okay, God's got Juliet too, in the same way that God's got me, in a very profound and lifelong way. And so I think that's going to help me like step back from this fear of, I mean, we have a lot to be afraid of nowadays with everything that's going on, but just like the day-to-day mothering of, like, her and her relationships, and her and her schooling, and her and her character development, that I just have so much fear wrapped around. And it's like, no, God's got her, and God's in all of that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, that is something I hadn't really thought about like this particular week, but I have been thinking about in the last couple of weeks past. What you said, like, you're dealing with Juliet as, a very young girl. And I've been faced with this with my adult children who, you never, it doesn't matter when your kids, move out of your house, they get married, and they start having their own kids, you still have that same feeling towards them as a mom. And yet it's so different, as they're now adults, and you have to just sit back and pray for them and coach them and trust that God is with them. He knows the steps that they're going to take, that he will hem them in before and behind. And you have to just let go and be quiet. Like, I can't tell you like how many times in the last, couple of months that I've had to just, shut my mouth and just pray and be, come alongside them as they ask us to. Like when they ask us to, and you can coach them. And there's that whole transition that takes place going out of high school into college and young adulthood, of a whole new trust in God's plan and purpose, and understanding that what you have believed to be true for yourself, like you just said, Michelle, is also true for your kids, and just to rest in his faithfulness in that. So yeah, I totally get what you're saying.
So profound.
Yeah.
So good, man. Yeah, I think for, I don't know, I think for me it really is this idea that God is he's going to call to them in his own way. So like you said, like this is true of them, that he will hem them in, that I can have faith that they are his even more than they're mine, and that he loves them even more than I do, and that I can trust them to him, because he actually knows every one of their days, and he's with them in every single one of them. He's outside of time, so he's already in their 30th birthdays with them. He already knows what each of those days looks like. He's kind of already lived it with them in some way, and so I can trust that. I think my application is to read this together all week. I know, Rachel, you and Justin have been doing the soaps with your kids, and I forced my family to do one. I'm going to be honest. So I forced us to do one all together. So we do them separately, but I forced us all to do one together. It was for one of the first couple weeks of the Psalms, and it ended in tears. And then that was a great success. And I burnt dinner during it because there were tears. And so dinner burnt, and there were at least 10 minutes of tears. And then that was the end of that soap. And it was special. And God works for good in all things, guys, even burnt dinner and soaps that end in tears. And so I'm going to try again. My application is, I'm trying again with Psalm 139, and even if it ends in tears, God works through tears even more sometimes than just happy, even Bible studies. So, yeah, that's my application. We're going to make it.
I'll go. So, verses 7 through 10, when it talks about, where can I go from your spirit? Where can I flee from your presence? I think, Britt, you referenced this verse earlier. It's so good. If I go up to the heavens, you're there. If I make my bed in the depths, you are there. Just this reminder that he's always with us. Always, always, always. And I have a tendency with my husband, with my friends, even with the Lord, I have a tendency to wait until I've reached my absolute limit before I ask for help, or I explode because I haven't done a good job of communicating my needs and sharing kind of where I'm at. And so I have a tendency to do that with the Lord also. It's almost like I don't feel like I consciously like ignore him, but I have a tendency to get so wrapped up in just the day to day. I keep coming back to, especially now in this crazy wackadoo season that we find ourselves in. I find I wake up in the morning and it's like, I got to get my work done, and then I got to get my kids on, and then I got to make sure the baby has snacks, and I got to be quiet because Justin has a Zoom call. And then I'm like, I don't even feel, to be honest, like I don't even give myself a chance to even really take a breath, let alone spend time with the Lord and recognize and acknowledge his presence. And I don't know, I just find it really comforting knowing like he's there and he's with me. And he's got us, you guys. And something that Justin said, it's been a few months ago, we just kind of talked about just seasons and things, when things just don't turn out the way that you want them to turn out, and you're kind of wrestling with like unmet expectations, and then questioning like, is he in this, or did we mishear him, or does he care? And one thing that Justin said to me, I remember walking back and he looked at me, he's like, Rachel, you might not necessarily like where God has you, but he has you. Mm-hmm. He does. And I can remember just being I got really overwhelmed and kind of emotional because I felt like it just exactly was what I needed to hear in that moment. And I feel like it also really applies to even just all of us mamas here tonight and the season that we're in, of even if you don't really like where he has us and he's with us. And I find a lot of comfort in that. And so the application, I think, for me this week is to just daily remind myself, even like reading those verses in the morning when I start my day, that he's with us. He's with me every day. His presence is with us. He's in our home. He's in our Zoom meetings, right? He's in making breakfast. He's in all of it. And I'm going to take a lot of comfort in that this week, I hope, because I need to remember that God's with me, even if it doesn't always feel that way. So.
Making me emotional now.
I think as we close out and move into prayer, before we pray, I don't want to assume that people know who we are or what we're doing or like what our mom situations look like. So I would love to have each of us just do the introduce yourself and how would you describe your momming situation? So I'm Nicole and I am married. I've been married for 20 years. And we have two daughters, a 15-year-old and an 11-year-old. And during that time, I was home with no job for only about a year, and then I started working part-time. And then I've been working full-time for the last 5 or 6 years. And I find that I do better when I am working some and momming some. That seems to work better for me. So that is my mom situation. Michelle, what is your mom situation?
I am mom to Juliet, and she is 7 years old, turning 8. And I've been a working mom the entire time that I've had her. I remember going back to work at 3 months in tears that I had to leave her at home. And I think being a working mom has it's own brand. It's its own breed of just everything's crazy all the time. And I think this season has its we all have challenges in this pandemic, but I think being a working mom of having to juggle the Zoom calls and the deadlines and the meetings and the emails along with being fully mom and fully teacher at the same time, it really has me in a spot where I get to develop lots of patience.
Terrilee, what is your mom situation?
My mom's situation, well, I just had my oldest child had her 32nd birthday a couple of days ago, which I can't believe I have a child that old. So yeah, my 3 kids are all grown. My oldest isn't married. My 2 younger ones are married. So now, and they both have children. So now I'm into that next stage of, like I was kind of mentioning before, I'm coaching parenting. our children and their spouses, and now looking at how do I continue to have an impact in my grandkids. So I have 5 grandkids with a 6th one due in June. So yeah, I love the stage of life. So for me, like in this season with the pandemic, it's really only been Ian and I at home because our kids are all gone, but still trying to figure out how do we do these relationships from a distance.
And I'm her other child.
Yeah.
I think she has a lot of honorary children.
I'll take them all.
That's awesome. Rachel, what is your mom situation?
Mom situation. Okay, so I'm married to Justin. We've been married for almost 12 years. And we've got 3 sons, 9, 7, and 2. And I have been an at-home mama since I had Jude. I do work part-time from home, so I've never worked outside the home since having kiddos. So yeah, it's boys. It's all boy things here at my house. So Star Wars and Ninja Turtles and lightsaber battles, and yeah. Yeah, it's an adventure, and I love it. It's loud and crazy and smelly and awesome. So I love being a boy mom. It's a lot of fun.
So good. It's so different. I had a sister, so I grew up with my sister and my mom, and it was really just us. And now I have 2 daughters, and so my whole life, I mean, and my husband is a very like respectful, quiet kind of guy, and so the like loud, smelly thing has never been. I've never lived with that.
I want to experience it. You know, you're always welcome when you're allowed to come over.
You're always welcome, but not right now.
But not right now because it's not allowed.
Don't come in my house.
Yeah.
And please don't judge how bad my bathroom smells. I just can't. I can't keep on top of it for some reason.
Like a train station. I bet. I mean, I haven't been in your. I mean, I haven't smelled your bathroom, but I'm assuming it smells similar to my front bathroom, which is generally like
Ugh.
a train station.
And I think sometimes cleaning it somehow like activates the pee smell worse. It's just bad news.
Well, I don't know. I'll save it for when we're done. I'm with you all the way.
Oh my gosh. Britt, what is your mom situation right now?
Just kidding. I'm a single mama, and I have been for quite some time. I grew up with all boys, and God gave me 2 beautiful girls, Sophie and Brooklyn. They're 8 and 10. And I'm a hairstylist, and I've been working, for the longest time. I have my own salon now, but I was in cosmetology school when I was pregnant with Brooklyn. I had her on a Saturday, and I was back there on Tuesday to finish school. So I popped her out and then went back to school to finish 2 more months. So that was really hard not being with her. But yeah, I had to finish my schooling, and it paid off. And so here we are. But yeah, I was working 6 days a week, and now I'm not working at all. So it's kind of challenging, but I love my girls. They're awesome.
Yeah, it's bittersweet, the like time with kids, but also not being able to work it's rough.
Yeah, that's the thing with right now too. I feel like not getting caught up because it can be very overwhelming. I try to just keep doing the gratitude thing every day and just reflecting on that and thinking to myself, like, we've never even been on a vacation, and in a sense, the financial part is stressful, but I'm trying to just take this time in to spend with God, and then focus on the girls. And I keep telling myself, like, you're never going to get this time again. Well, I shouldn't say that, but I haven't had this time before. And so just trying to change my perspective and see the positive things. Like, this is some great quality time. I'm learning things about my kids. It's kind of embarrassing to say, but they're at school so much and I'm working. But I'm learning things about them that I never knew. And this has actually been a really beautiful thing at the end of the day, because I'm getting to know them so well. And there's been a lot of connection and growth within our relationship. So I think this has honestly been a good thing. I can say the quarantine is, with all of the bad stuff, there's so much beauty in it as well. So I'm finding that in this season.
That's good.
Man, good job. Like, good job not getting so scared that you miss the beauty of what's in front of you.
Mm-hmm.
That's hard, but you're right. Like, it's priceless. Now you're gonna make me cry. It's priceless. Like, you're right. Like, we're not gonna have this exact thing again.
Yeah.
So it is worth fighting to make the most of it. Like any day, right? We would try to make the most of any day. And so this is just another day. It's weirder than most, but
Yeah.
it's just another day. Like, all right, I'm gonna make the most of this one then. So that's really good.
Yeah.
Melissa, what is your mom's situation?
So I am married to Andrew. We've been married for 14 years, and we have two boys, Evan, who is 6, and Keller, who's 4. And my job, so I'm a therapist. I don't know how many people actually know what I do. Some people just assume I also work at the church sometimes, and I'm like, no, I actually don't. So because of that, I mean, my job's been flexible in that I was like able to take like longer maternity leaves if I wanted, but I always did come back and kept like, kind of where I'm at right now would probably be like 3/4 time load, for a therapist. So I do that and then mom the rest of the time. And yeah, the season has, I think, been extra challenging because my youngest son had all of these, has additional services that were all provided through the school district that all of a sudden were gone overnight, in addition to, just in addition to like him losing a social component of his life, which he really, really needed. So now we're navigating, he's only in preschool, but we have that. Plus now I'm navigating, they're kind of adding some stuff in, but like doing, speech therapy over Zoom, and not just, I don't only have to do his little worksheets, but I have to like facilitate like social emotional learning in my home and like try to do like all these specific things. And I think I've been, speaking of, I know there's been like a lot of anxiety, but I've just been really worried about like backtracking and behaviors and like him losing his progress. And I mean, he has the most amazing, best big brother in the entire planet to be able to play with. So I'm so glad that he has that. But yeah, that aspect of it has been tough because just the lack of routine and the lack of like the structure of the classroom makes things hard sometimes for us. And so we've had like, just like, I think just like everybody, our fair share of good days and bad days, but I feel super, just I think in the specific area, I'm like, I feel like the mom part I have down pretty well, but in terms of teaching him, I just feel so like ill equipped and just to do it well and do it right. So that's been a challenge for sure.
Yeah, it is challenging right now.
Mhm.
I can choose someone, but if one of you already feels convicted that you want to pray for the moms and whatever their momhood looks like, raise your hand. Otherwise, I'll pick someone. Ready?
I vote for Terrilee.
Me too. I vote for Carrie.
Well, that's good. I was going to ask Terrilee, so I feel like it's unanimous.
She has wisdom. She has all of
Wise. Yes, she is.
Mom. So
Terrilee, will you please pray for the moms and whatever their mom situation looks like at the crossing?
Yes, sure. I would be glad to. Heavenly Father, just thank you so much for each person that is here and each person that is listening. God, I thank you for all these moms in whatever shape they come in, Lord, for those who are just starting their mom journey, for those who haven't started yet, and for those who really desire to be moms but just haven't had that joy hit their lives yet, Lord. And for those who are finished, well, not finished because we never really do finish, Lord, but who have now moved on to coaching their children, Lord, just wherever each person is that is listening today, Lord, we're just thankful for the role that you've given them, Lord, the value that they have, God, the impact that they make in the lives of their children, Lord, that I pray that this time today in Psalms 139 would just really be an encouragement to them, Lord, as they hear these words and understand that you have called them to this place, God, that you have put them in this role, Lord, that you go before them, that you are always with them, Lord, that you see them. I pray that this truth of knowing that every day of their lives and every day of their children's lives is numbered, Lord, would just give them such confidence and a freedom from fear in their lives, Lord. I just pray that they would have such a sense on this Mother's Day of the value of their role, and the fact that you have uniquely put them in this place with the specific children that you've given them, Lord, because they are the only ones who could parent like they do, God. And I just really pray that they would just have that sense of certainty of your role in their life, Lord. And we thank you, God. We pray that as each woman leaves this service, God, that they would just have such a clear understanding of who you've created them to be and the role that you've given them, Lord. So we just commit this time to you in your name. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you, guys. Thank you for your honesty and vulnerability and time. And it is a joy to be a mom alongside you and know that we have each other. And I pray that the women of the crossing continue to make connections and be in groups and whatever else that helps them connect with moms, because we need each other.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you, guys. All right.
Yeah, thanks for thinking of this.
You're welcome.